Catherine Baldwin. I am the author of this book, How to Fall in Love, and I'm a love, dating and relationships coach. And I work, let me just add people in, and I work primarily with single women. I do have a current male client who's doing absolutely brilliantly, and I work mainly with women who are single looking for love, and I support them to find a happy and healthy relationship. And I have had some wonderful successes, especially this year so far, 2 marriages amongst my clients, 1 engagement. I've just found out another client is pregnant, who got married the previous year. So I'll come on to all that a bit later. But what I'd love you to know about me is that it's most likely that I have been where you are. Through my 20s, through my 30s, and into my early 40s, I was either single for long periods of time, or I was in relationships that didn't work out. Some of those were okay, some of those were disastrous. I kept falling for emotionally unavailable men. I kept falling for men who didn't want to be with me or commit to me. I kept falling for men who didn't treat me the way I deserved to be treated, and I let them do that. I also went to the extremes of emotional unavailability. I had a wonderful boyfriend for a number of years who then turned gay, is now gay and married, and I absolutely adore him. And he was a lovely man, but he was gay. So that's one extreme of emotional unavailability. And I did always actually quite fancy gay men, and I think that's because they were so unavailable. So I really understand being drawn to emotionally unavailable people. So that all continued into my early 40s, and then late 30s, early 40s, I started really determinedly wanting to figure out why I couldn't make a relationship work. It was driving me insane. And I put in a lot of time and a lot of money and a lot of effort, and everything changed. And I'll talk a little bit more about my story later, but I committed at 43, I got married at 48. I've been married for 3 and a bit years. And before committing, I did all those 1 foot in, 1 foot out, fault finding, ambivalence, indecision, not sure if he's right for me, judging him, criticizing him, pushing him away. I did all that, toing and froing, pushing and pulling. So I had to figure out why I was doing that. So yeah, some of you can relate, I think, to some of the things I'm talking about. So what we're going to look at today, and I'll try not to bombard you with information, because I have a lot of information to share with you. We're going to look at laying our foundations, because in order to date with courage, clarity, and confidence, and find healthy love with a committed, emotionally available person, which is, I think, what most of you want, we have to look at ourselves first. So the most shocking thing for me on my recovery journey, recovering from terrible relationships, was to realize that I was the common denominator in every single relationship. So I was the common denominator in all those years of singleness and in every relationship with every unavailable person. I was the one who was there in every situation. And, you know, I hope that doesn't sound too harsh, but for me, knowing that truth, recognizing that truth, understanding that truth, and being willing to face that truth was a game-changing moment. So perhaps you can just, and the important thing is to acknowledge that perhaps there's something that we are doing. Now, I won't be able to diagnose you all in this session, and we are all different, we are all unique, and we all have different backgrounds and circumstances. But we are generally united by some patterns, and I hope I can talk about some of the patterns that might unite you and that might help you. But we are the common denominator in all our relationships, and the key is to understand why. And for some of us, the reasons will be more obvious, as in, I understand that I had faulty relationships with my parents. Maybe there was divorce, maybe there was abandonment, rejection, maybe I was bullied, maybe I was hurt by my first love. There will be obvious things. And even though they're obvious, we don't really understand the extent of their impact on us, because that's in the subconscious. For others, there won't be an obvious reason. And that is really frustrating. That's crazy making. Why? There's no obvious reason. But I can pretty much guarantee that there's something in your subconscious, rooted in your childhood relationships, probably, that is impacting how you relate to in romantic relationships, whether that's to men, women, people. So something is impacting how you relate. So we want to look at what that could be. So in this session, I am going to look at three main things. One is your relationship with yourself. One is your fears, and one is your patterns. Now, there's lots of other things we could explore, but I'm going to try and keep it to that. And I'd love you to participate, those of you who are here live. So I'm going to look through those things. Then I'm going to tell you about how we can work through those, and how I have worked through those and other people have worked through those. I'm going to share some of the work that I do and the things that I have coming up that might support you. Then we'll have a Q&A, and then I'll switch the recording off, and we can have a connection, a chat without the recording. So my aim is to finish everything by 8:14. 8:15 rather, not 14. That is my aim, and I generally go over time, so I'll try my best to keep it, and for anyone who wants to stay on a bit later, I can stay until 8:30. So let me just skim through the chat before I begin. Okay, so someone says they don't understand their own, they don't understand their reasons why these relationships don't work, because parents were happy and loving and together forever. And I do have clients who come to me in that situation with that background, and we can explore, and we can often diagnose something. It might be that the relationship you're looking for, well, the standard of relationship you're looking for, you feel it can never match up to what they had, and then somehow it's never good enough. So that's just one idea that could be happening. And I just want to share a couple of the problems or challenges that were shared. So not physically attracted to older men who seem available, fear of abandonment, attracting unavailable men, that comes up a lot, difficulty making decisions, so that ambivalence, do I want to be with them, do I not? Difficulty trusting, unavailable men, not trusting myself to make a good decision, lots of fear, feelings about ourselves, aging, losing hair, struggling to let go of exes, getting involved with people who aren't of our level, aren't able to communicate, or aren't emotionally intelligent like we are, unavailable men, resistance to actually dating, yeah, how to recognize available men, how do I know if they are the right one? Great questions. I won't be able to answer all the questions, but if you look on my YouTube, I've got loads of these masterclasses and webinars recorded there, and some shorter videos, and you'll find shorter videos on my Instagram as well, and also on TikTok if you're on TikTok. But let me start with your connection to yourself, because what came up in the chat is trust. How do I trust myself to make a good decision around love, dating, and relationships? How do I connect with my intuition? How do I know whether it's my intuition or my fear, one of my main topics, and I do have a whole webinar on that. And there's one question I'd like to ask you. Well, it's a big question. How connected are you to yourself and your feelings? How much time do you spend in your day connecting to your true self and your feelings? And how many behaviors do you use to numb your feelings? So I am an expert in numbing my feelings, having had a eating disorder, binge eating, starving, compulsively exercising, having had a binge drinking habit, having had a love addiction habit where I would keep falling for unhealthy men, and the drama and the chaos of that. That was a way of me to avoid my feelings and to distract from my feelings. Work has totally been a place to throw myself into and avoid life. So avoid feelings, avoid pain, avoid the difficult stuff like trying to have a relationship. So I'd just like you to pop something in the chat, if you can, about how connected you are to yourself, how long you spend in a day connecting to yourself, and any behaviors you might use to disconnect from yourself. Food, drink, cigarettes, scrolling, TV, sex, compulsively exercising. You know, obviously we have to eat to live, and alcohol's okay, and it's good to exercise. But what we want to look at is where we're taking those things to the extreme to disconnect with our true feelings. And because of what you've put in the chat, and because I know some of you, and because I know women like you, I imagine that beneath the busyness and the rushing and the running, and beneath the socializing and the achieving, and beneath the dating and scrolling, there is pain, there is grief, there is loss, there is perhaps a sense of, I don't have any hope, there is confusion. So if you recognize any of those feelings, please do pop them in the chat. And the key is to be able to feel them. And many of us don't want to feel our feelings. I don't want to feel mine. I learned in childhood to avoid my feelings, because when I was little, there was so much chaos and pain going on around me that I didn't want to feel it, and I didn't have any mechanisms to process it or any people around me to help me. So I stick it inside, and I put food on top, and I put alcohol on top, and I put work on top, and running on top, and then I'm so detached from my feelings that I haven't got a clue how I feel. I am totally disconnected to my intuition. I haven't learned to trust myself. And then how can I date when I'm disconnected from myself? So do you relate to that? Someone says that they recognize all those feelings. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, working really hard, always switched on, long to-do list. I tend to work with women who are successful, professional, and we're busy, and we're achieving stuff, and we're doing wonderful things, and that's all great. But at what cost? And I asked this of a client today, at what cost? So, we will find our truth. Some of you said you don't understand why these relationships aren't working out because perhaps there's nothing obvious in your past. We will find our truth if we spend some time with ourselves. If we make that uncomfortable step of stepping back, maybe saying no to something, work, social, and spending a bit more time with ourselves, being really honest with ourselves. So, so people say in the chat saying too busy, but starting to spend a bit more time reflecting. And there's a difference between the thinking and the feeling, and that's a whole other story. So it's really good to reflect and to try and figure it out. But the other thing is we can get totally lost in the trying to figure it out. And we're hard workers, aren't we? We're really hard workers and we're determined. So we're going to try and figure it out. But sometimes, just like it's not like work where there isn't sort of a formula we can apply to figure it all out. Sometimes we have to sink right down into our feelings. And sometimes we have to crumble a little bit so that we can be put back together, which is what I said to a client today, who's just started working with me and she's feeling rather discombobulated. And that's because we're shaking everything up. We're going to shake it all up and we're going to take down this wall, take some bricks out of it, and then we're going to rebuild it. So if you're obsessively trying to figure it out or thinking too much or trying to work it out, breathe, step back and sink into your feelings. And I've got a short meditation on my YouTube which I can send round with the recording and the follow-up email, which is just a literally hand on heart, how am I feeling? And I often do that as part of these webinars, but I'm aware of time. But after we finish, hand on heart, how am I feeling? And it's not the top layer, because the top layer will say busy, stressed, worried, anxious. It's the next layer, and then the next layer, and the next layer. And another question we need to ask as we go through those layers relates to your self-esteem and your self-worth and how lovable you feel. And I'm going to come on to that in a moment. Just have a look what people are saying. So journaling is helpful, tapping into the feelings. Difficult to express those feelings to others. So whatever we find difficult, that's where we want to go. So our healing is measured by the number of uncomfortable actions we are taking. So I know that it's difficult to express our feelings to others, but I don't know everyone individually here, but perhaps being more vulnerable, choosing trustworthy people, being more vulnerable and open might be one step on your way to finding a healthy relationship. So if it's hard to express our feelings to others, think about challenging that. Think about being more vulnerable, think about softening. And softening is, I have some courses that I'll talk about in a while, but softening is part of my course. And for women who are high achieving and go-getting and independent and all those things, most of my clients are like that. Softening, becoming more vulnerable, becoming more willing to be open with our hearts, with safe people first, because what we'll tend to do is we'll find a man or a woman or a person we fancy, and then we'll totally open our hearts and we'll become really vulnerable. But we haven't practiced that yet in a safe setting. We haven't given ourselves the opportunity to trust, to learn to trust and to measure, to be measured in how much we share of our emotions. So just seeing what's in the chat, people tend to spend time scrolling, to-do lists, working, avoiding feelings, doing distracting activities, sometimes journaling, difficulty ending relationships that aren't serving you, fear of being alone. So being vulnerable to others is scary and difficult. Absolutely, absolutely. And romantic relationships require the biggest leap of vulnerability. It's a huge risk. You're risking your heart, and if your heart has been hurt before, which for some of us it has, and for some of us that happened in our childhoods, parent dying, parent moving out, parent leaving, some of that happened in our childhoods, or home breaking apart, or it could be as simple as, not even simple, but it could be that our parents didn't have time or space for us or weren't able to emotionally connect with us. So that was a relationship. It was our first relationship. And maybe our hearts got hurt in that relationship. So it makes sense that we're not open to being vulnerable and trusting, because our early experiences of relationships were painful. But we need to, we deserve to challenge those fears of being vulnerable. So spend ages connecting to yourself, but sometimes it's the man who's disconnected, and that comes down to the choices that we are making. And then perhaps, being too accepting of people, or too empathetic, and not standing up for what we believe in. Willing to risk my money but not my heart. Okay, so the parents told each other that they love each other, but not to the children. So this is when our heart breaks. This is when we get that early wound, and that early wound gets buried deep in our subconscious, and we don't even realize it's there. And then we go through life and we have these relationships, and the wound shows up, and we don't even realize it's showing up. So I know now that I was emotionally unavailable for many, many years. Did it look like that? Not at all. I traveled through Australia, New Zealand, Mexico, lived in Mexico and Brazil. I dated lots of men. I slept with lots of men. I was mostly drunk when I did it, but I had relationships. I dated a lot. Did that look like emotional unavailability? No, it didn't, because I was often in one, or chasing one, or looking for one. But only when I saw the light, late 30s, did I realize that just because I was always in relationships, or looking for one, or wanting one, or chasing one, that didn't mean that I was emotionally available. That meant actually that I was wounded, that I was desperate for that wound to be healed, that I was craving love, affection, attention, being seen. I was craving it and I was looking for it. But as soon as I got anywhere near it, as soon as a nice person expressed a desire to be with me, I'm out of here, run for the hills, find fault. He's not good enough. Don't like his shoes. Don't like his hair. Don't like his accent. Don't like where he went to university. It's not good enough for me. So push, pull, push, pull. And that was because I was emotionally unavailable. And I was emotionally unavailable because my parents weren't able to give me what I needed. And I won't go into the whole psychology of it, but very briefly, we are meant to be seen, heard. We are meant to feel safe and secure. We are meant to be mirrored. We are meant to be affirmed. We are meant to be treated as valuable. And even if our parents didn't intend to do anything harmful to us, a lot of us have come away from childhood with some scars. Perhaps they loved us too much. Perhaps they smothered us. Perhaps they mothered us too long and too hard, and perhaps we rely on them too much. So we're all different. There are different ways, but you will be able to understand your patterns if you do this work, and you'll be able to change them. The first thing we were talking about was how we disconnect from ourselves and our feelings. And I'd like you to make one commitment to me and to this group of women who have gathered here. I would like you to commit in the next few days to increase the time that you spend with yourself and your feelings. Now, that could be that you're going to watch the YouTube video I send around tomorrow, that you're going to sit hand on heart, that you're going to put a meditation on Insight Timer. I absolutely love, I've forgotten her name. I'll come back to it later. There's a lady on Insight Timer who's fantastic. She's got wonderful 10-minute meditations. It might be that you even have lunch outside instead of at your desk, just little changes, subtle changes that you're going to make to be more connected to yourself. It could be for some of you that you're going to be a little more vulnerable with people you trust. And the next thing we talked about was how lovable you feel. And this isn't, often, we all talk about self-love and self-esteem and all that. That's surface level. I want you to go deeper. So you might think, I'm pretty confident, I have good self-esteem, I like how I look or whatever. Oh, you might not. You might not. And if you don't think that, it's going to be really tricky to go dating if you don't love and accept yourself. But you might think that you do, that you've got a pretty good score when it comes to that. But actually, how lovable do you feel deep down? What wounds, self-esteem wounds, were inflicted on you, perhaps at school, perhaps later on, perhaps in your childhood, that left you feeling not good enough, like it's your fault, like you don't actually want people to see all of you because if they find out, they will reject you. How lovable do you feel? So bullying at school, yeah, how lovable do you feel? So just have a think in a minute while I read through the chat. Just have a think on a deeper level. How lovable do I feel? Am I ready to let someone in to see all of me with all my crazy ways and my faults and my flaws? And am I ready to risk my heart even though it's been hurt before? Now, you have to be really honest with yourselves, because we can go into dating and we can have all these experiences and we can blame the other person, or we can blame the app or the dating system or the website or the COVID or whatever it is. And maybe those things do have their part to play. They are at fault, but how lovable do you feel? Are you ready to risk your heart? You know, our hurt happens in relationships. So we get hurt in relationships all the time. And we got hurt, many of us, in our younger relationships. And that hurts. Our healing happens in relationship too. And the first level of healing is doing something like this. So you're in relationship with me right now and with each other. And I am sharing and you are sharing. That is relationship. The next level of relationship could be working with a professional and being really honest and open and having that healing relationship. That's something that I have had throughout my journey and something that I offer people, a healing relationship. So those relationships heal, and then you might have some more friends, some more people in your network with whom you can heal. And ultimately, your romantic relationship will also be healing. But we don't want to go into a romantic relationship with our open wounds, feeling raw, exposed. That's why we want to build these foundations. Good marriage, 55 years on, stable childhood, many years of disappointing relationships, baffled as to where we go wrong. What if you can't recognize the patterns? If the reason that relationship ends is different, yeah, if there are different ends to the relationship, we always have to look at ourselves. And there will be something, and I don't know whether it comes from the child, from the parenting, or from other experiences, but there will be something that has a cause and effect, that these things happen for a reason. There is nothing nonsense about us. Things happen for a reason, and it's difficult to accept, but I believe that if we do this inner work, we will understand. And the thing is, we might not get it right next time, but it will be better, and it will be better, and it will be better, and we will change and we will evolve, and then it will be the right one, and perhaps not in our time scale, but building self-awareness, building self-knowledge, spending more time with ourselves. There will be something in each of your lives, that you could change tomorrow to make a slight difference to how you are, to how much you love yourself, to how open you are. So for one, that would be, I'm going to work less hours. For another, it would be, I'm not going to eat lunch at my desk. For another, it would be, I'm going to be vulnerable with somebody I trust. For another, it will be, I'm going to take a break from dating and I'm just going to have some fun. I'm going to let go of the control. I'm going to let go of the outcome. For another, it will be, I need to look at this. I'm going to do some work on this. So there will be changes that you can all make tomorrow in small ways. If you're not ready but want to be, I would suggest that you get people around you who are walking the same path. And that's why I do group work and run group courses, which I'll tell you about in a moment, and retreats, because, you know, it's a bit like getting a personal trainer. You know, what if I want to lift weights? I want to lift weights, but I don't want to lift weights. I want the strong body, but I really don't want to lift weights. What do? I have to get someone to help me. I have to get an accountability buddy. I have to get support. You know, what if I really wanted a relationship in my late 30s. I knew that I did. So I got loads of support. I paid for it, and I found it in other ways too. So we can't do it on our own. I mean, I say this all the time in these workshops. I don't think we can do it on our own. Some people can. Some people who are, you know, those people who sail through life and sail through love and sail through relationships, fine. But you're not one of those people because you're on this workshop. So we need support. We need people around us. So is it true that if you feel raw and still processing a previous relationship, I mean, anyone coming into your life may not be emotionally available? Yeah. So if you're feeling raw and still processing a previous relationship, I would pause. I would pause and build your foundations. I would build your foundations, and I would, you know, you don't have to be perfect, and you don't have to be super sorted, and you don't have to be fixed, but you don't want to date raw and feeling totally exposed. And the other thing I talk about a lot is dating with a craving. So again, you might think I'm not dating with a craving, but some of us are, because one thing is we have these wounds, these deep wounds. So perhaps we missed out on love, affection, attention. Perhaps we got so much love, attention, and affection that we're so desperate to replace that with a person, and we can't do it because it doesn't match up. Perhaps we were wounded, we were left, we were abandoned. So if we have some sort of wound like that, we are craving. Dating with a craving is like going grocery shopping when you are starving, no discernment, anything in your basket, chocolate, crisps, alcohol. You know, we don't pause and we don't discern. And then we get hurt. And then we think, well, that didn't work. Why would I bother? I'm not going to do it again. And so we sabotage ourselves. So dating with a craving is the opposite to dating with healthy foundations. And I don't recommend it because we will waste time and energy and money and years of our lives if we haven't done the necessary inner work too. Someone says they know they're lovable, but there's so much on top of it, not feeling good enough, feeling wrong. And this leads me to hide my feelings. So there's two things going on there. I feel lovable, but I don't feel good enough. I feel like there's something wrong with me. And then because we probably expect to be rejected, if we don't feel good enough, we will expect to be rejected. So we will reject before we are rejected. So we will sabotage, and we might not even know we're doing it. But criticism and judgment of others, potential partners, is a massive sign that we are rejecting, running away before they can reject us, and that we are emotionally unavailable. It's also a massive sign of a lack of self-love and self-acceptance. So if I look at a man and I think you're weak, you're not very strong, you're not very independent, you haven't traveled very much, I don't like who you are, you're not strong enough, that means that I am not able to accept my own vulnerability and my own weakness. And I need to soften and accept myself, all of myself. The tough, strong survivor bits, which I do very well, and the soft, the vulnerable, the weak, those bits too. I have to accept those too. So somebody says they've been through grief and 47 in 5 weeks and feel it's too late. Absolutely. Absolutely. I hear you. And, you know, you've been through grief and that's traumatic. Feel it's too late, all the work. But, all I can say is from my own experience and from working with women your age above, I have a client who worked with me. I'll share something she said in a moment. She took my foundations course, my Date with Courage course, and she did some one-to-one coaching, and she thought that she would never have a relationship. Everyone else in her family, including nieces and nephews, were all getting married. And, she was in her 50s. She is now engaged. And that engagement wouldn't have happened if we hadn't had some one-to-one conversations about the fact that she didn't want to be with him. She wanted to leave him. She judged him. She criticized him. He wasn't good enough. He wasn't right. We talked about it. We understood what was going on for her. She stayed. She is happily engaged now. So it's not too late. And of course I would say that, but I think, and you might not be as far away as you think. And I say this to everybody, it might be some of you need, and some of you might not have had a relationship for many years or might not have had one at all. And that's okay. That doesn't mean to say you have to have years and years of failed ones before you find a good one. What it does mean is that there might be some inner work to do, but it doesn't have to take as long as you think. Because I know many of the women who come to work with me are already well developed, done lots of work on themselves. I'll talk about my coaching in a moment, but the other thing is my coaching, and I don't usually blow my own trumpet, but I work really quickly. I work really quickly because of my experience. And I have someone who said they've got further with me in weeks of coaching than they have in years of therapy. So it doesn't have to take forever. So we've talked about connecting to your feelings, connecting to yourself, and making a commitment to yourself right now to do something a little bit differently, to connect to yourself on a deeper level. Spend more time with yourself. Put down a behavior. It could be drinking too much, eating too much, exercising too much, running too fast, working too hard. Step back a little bit from that behavior. Allow some space for feelings. Allow some space for space. You feel it to heal it. And with the healing, that's when you will come out and find your healthy relationship. Think about softening. Think about being vulnerable with people you trust. Self-esteem comes from doing esteemable things. If you don't feel good enough, have a look in your life and see, how am I treating myself? Am I treating myself as someone who isn't good enough? How are my clothes? How's my hair? How's my nails? And, I'm terrible at doing all that stuff. But am I treating myself? Am I eating well? Am I giving myself time and space? Am I listening to my feelings? We often treat ourselves as we were treated. So how were you treated? And are you treating yourself in the same way? If you were treated well, wonderful. If you were neglected, then are you neglecting yourself? It's very hard to be consistently loving towards ourselves if we weren't consistently loved. I know that absolutely, but it is possible with work and with support. Okay. Thought you'd gone into the last relationship with confidence and work on yourself, and another person shattered it. And he was, or she, whoever it was physically desirable. So difficult to be interested elsewhere. I think give yourself some time. Shattered is a strong word. So rebuilding is important. And perhaps there's a little bit more work that you need to do on yourself, just a little bit. And perhaps you need more support. You might need some more people around you. You might need someone by your side, a co-pilot. Give yourself some space. I want to talk now about our fears and our patterns. And this is a massive topic, and I have masterclasses on fears and patterns. So you can watch those as well. Just pop down in the chat in a couple of words any fears that you are aware of in terms of dating, being in a relationship. What are you afraid of? And I could probably list about 25, and you could probably relate to many of them. I've got my own fears. I've coached many people. I know fears back to front. So even if you don't think you have any, maybe it's fear of getting hurt again. Maybe it's fear of making a wrong choice. Maybe it's fear of being rejected. Maybe it's fear of being seen for who we are, fear of making a mistake, fear of feeling trapped or suffocated, losing myself. So I was speaking to a client today who was afraid of losing herself in relationship. So what I said was, okay, if we don't have our foundations, so imagine a house without foundations, you go into a relationship and the whole thing crumbles. It's like you're built your house on sand and it crumbles. And then you merge with the other person. So you don't have healthy foundations, you don't have good boundaries, you merge with the other person. And especially if you're wounded, two wounds come together, it gets stuck like this. Now you either won't be able to get out because your two wounds have come together, or you'll feel so terrified by the closeness and the intimacy that you'll run off in the opposite direction. That's what happens if we don't have foundations. So losing ourselves is a real fear, but you don't have to lose yourself if you have good foundations. Sacrificing needs and wants, not having enough time for self, getting hurt again or manipulated, being seen for who we are and then rejected and humiliated. I bring that right back to self-love. Now, if that is a real belief, that if somebody sees me for who I am and then will reject me, that deserves some work, some compassion, some healing, some support around that, because it's going to be very difficult to date and find love with that fear. And I know it is, because I've been there. Fear of rejection, holding boundaries, recognizing red flags and not ignoring them, passions being taken and showing off. So that's fear of judgment, fear of criticism. So we have all these fears. And then what are our patterns? So patterns of being drawn to unavailable people is a really common one. I mean, maybe every relationship is different, but they all end with the person not committing to me or choosing someone else. So the pattern there would be I keep going into relationships with people who, walk away from me, abandon me, reject me. So what other patterns might you have? Do you not even try? If you don't try, if you stay single and don't even try, then that is a pattern. Losing freedom, getting hurt, getting rejected. So some of these fears come from our core beliefs about relationships, and you might need to do some work on that. And the good news is I've got loads of resources to help you with this. So sometimes we don't realize, but we have core beliefs about relationships that they're going to look like this, or they're going to be like this. So marriage is going to be suffocating, or marriage is going to take stuff away from me, or relationships are going to shrink me or reduce me or overwhelm me or take away from me. They're going to suffocate me, or they're not going to be fun, or all these core beliefs that we might have. And again, if we go into dating with those core beliefs, then we are going to be, we're not going to be successful. So we want to look at our core beliefs about dating and relationships, and that's some work that I do with people. Fear of speaking one's truth, is an excellent one to flag up. The biggest challenge for everyone, for all of you, is to show up authentically in your relationships, all of them. Because often we don't show up authentically in our relationships because we're afraid of conflict, of criticism, of judgment, of being left, of being abandoned, of not belonging. We don't show up authentically. So the first challenge is to look at all your relationships, friendships, family relationships. Am I showing up authentically in these relationships? And if not, what can you do to change that a little bit? Are you saying yes when you mean no, or vice versa? And then the biggest challenge for many of us who have these fears is to show up authentically in a romantic relationship, to be ourselves. Now, obviously, we're going to have to compromise along the way. To make a relationship work, we might have to make some compromises. But you want to try and be as honest and open about who you are from the start. And if we don't believe in ourselves, or if we have low self-esteem or low confidence, or if we are craving a relationship, we won't show up authentically. because we will want to make that relationship happen more than anything. Cancelling dates, resistance. Why the resistance when we don't want it, when we want a good, healthy relationship? So this is the ambivalence, isn't it? This is the ambivalence, and it will be different for everyone, but I know why I did that. So I'd be like paying loads of money to dating websites and spending time on apps. Yeah, I really want to find a partner. That was my surface level. I want to find love. And then deep down in my subconscious, I've got all these fears and all these beliefs. So love means heartache because my dad left and my parents divorced. Love means suffocation because I felt like I was responsible for my mum her entire life. Love means trapped, and marriage is expensive, and then divorce, and then single parenthood, and all this disaster that I saw in my family of origin. So deep down, I've also got these core beliefs and these fears. So I want to be in a relationship, but I don't want to be in a relationship. So I'll spend loads of money on dating websites, but I won't actually try, or I just won't try. And that is the ambivalence, the push-pull. I've got an excellent article on push-pull that's part of my course. I think it's also on my website. That's what's going on. I want it, but I don't want it. I want it, but it terrifies me. I want it, but I fear this. I want it, but I think it's going to be like this, and I don't want it. So I think that's often at the core of the resistance. How do I know if someone is emotionally available? So I've got some short videos on this on my Instagram. I mean, the first thing is we need to be emotionally available to ourselves. So that comes right back to that first question. And you probably don't want to hear this, but it is about being more available to your own emotions first. So how available are you to your emotions? That's the first thing I would say. Emotional availability. So, I mean, the first thing I would look for consistency. So someone who does what they say they'll do. So I think that is emotionally available. It shows that they are willing. So, you know, they say they're going to meet you and they meet you. They say they're going to pick you up and they pick you up. So consistency, I think that's important. People who are willing to hear you, and also we have to be willing to hear them, who are comfortable with you expressing your authentic truth. And that's not about pouring it all out on day one, but it is about, yeah, it's hard to tell if you're meeting people online, but, you know, I would move to a Zoom call and a coffee date as soon as possible and keep it brief. You know, you're gathering information and you want to be gathering it slowly, not all at once. You don't want to be pouring out the intensity of lust of all the heartaches or your past patterns. You don't want to go for the initial intensity because that's not real. So slowly and gradually, but you show up authentically. You spend lots of time with your intuition. So it's often about you. You're connected to your emotions, and you look for signs that they show up authentically, that they are consistent, that they say that they do what they say they're going to do, that they are open to conversation and communication and negotiation, and that there's a capacity for intimacy, which means that, yeah, they're open to discussion. They're open to negotiation, compromise, even if they're not the most. So some of you actually know my husband. You know, he doesn't wear his heart on his sleeve. One wouldn't describe him as, you know, emotionally effusive. And I would have said at the start that he was kind of unavailable, you know, emotionally. Like getting emotion out of him was like getting blood out of a stone. But what I saw in him was a capacity for intimacy, a willingness to grow and to learn. Like, he doesn't do therapy or counseling. I do that stuff. I do the coaching. I do the personal development. I try and show up authentically, and he does too. And he picks up really quickly this language that I use, you know, and he yeah, he was willing to grow and to change. And yeah, I could go on about that. How is it that how is it that a man can't commit to me but's been able to commit to others? Is this about me being unavailable emotionally? It could be. I mean, it could be that you guys weren't suited, and if we can accept that, heal, let that go, grieve the loss. It could be that he wasn't for you. It could be that you weren't sufficiently emotionally available, that you weren't ready, and that's okay, because you will be ready. Maybe you just weren't ready then. Someone was consistent for 8 to 9 months and then changed. So I really hear that. And I mean, I think this comes back to how much we want it and how much we might overlook little subtle things that perhaps we could have noticed earlier on. And there might not have been any of those things in this case, but I know in many cases with people I work with, at some point on the journey, we compromised ourselves. We heard something, our intuition went, don't know about that, not so sure about that. And, I do advocate giving benefit of the doubt and allowing time and, gathering information and not making a snap judgment about people. I definitely advocate that. But often we compromise ourselves, and I did it, when he said something or he didn't do something, or I'll just let that go. I'll let that go, because I wanted it to work so much that I overrode everything. Now, I don't know if that's the case here, but that often happens. So I'm just going to recap again. We've talked about fears, and then we talked about patterns, and the work that I think is important to do, which you can do on your own, or you can do with me, or you can do on one of my courses or retreats, is to connect your fears and your patterns. So we touched on fears in the chat and on this workshop, but when you start writing them down, honestly, there's a whole list, and they come from all directions. And then when we look at our patterns, there are lots of different patterns, and if you can connect your patterns with your fears, so if I have a fear that I am not good enough, or if I have a fear that I'm not lovable, or if I have a fear that I will be seen and then rejected, my pattern will be that I don't date, or that I arrange a date and then pull out, or that I fall for people who are emotionally unavailable, because then they won't actually get to see me, because they won't want to go that deep. So if I have a fear of being abandoned or rejected, I will subconsciously go for people who are going to be emotionally unavailable, because then then I can never get that close. So I'll never get to experience that true intimacy. So I'll never get to experience that commitment. And in my mind, commitment equals pain. So if I date a commitment phobe, I don't have to experience pain, because we'll never actually get there. We'll never get to the true relationship, the true intimacy. Yeah, and just for those of you who have come out of something and are hurting, I would give yourself loads of time and love and compassion. And I would go back to the first thing we talked about, which is, how are you avoiding your feelings? And if you're avoiding your feelings, spend some time with them. Be vulnerable with people you trust, and try and build that connection with your intuition, so that you feel safe when you go dating. So think about you and your feeling of safety. Do I trust myself to make a good decision? Do I trust my discernment? Do I feel safe to go on this date? Do I have good boundaries? Do I know that I'm going to walk away at midnight rather than sleep with them? Or do I think I'll sleep with them? Do you trust yourself? Do you feel safe? would you let yourself out at night? Would you, and finding that sense of inner safety and inner confidence. And you don't do it on your own. Absolutely, you don't do it on your own. Trust myself, don't trust others. So that's something to work on. There's a question about my retreats in the UK. So what's going to happen now is I'm just going to talk you through some of the things that I offer and some of the ways that other women have got through many of the things that you're experiencing. So lay your foundations for love first, and then you will be able to date with courage, clarity, and confidence. I said earlier that I married at 48 after finishing my book. A week after publishing my book, my husband proposed. We had been on and off, and indecision and ambivalence and fear and all those things, and all the things that you have shared about, hopelessness, long periods of singleness. It's never going to happen for me. Dating is a disaster. Can't do the apps. I can't do the websites. I never meet anyone. Nobody's available. All the best men are taken. All those things I went through, as did many of my clients. So this is what happens when we lay our foundations. So Anne, who got married this year, we worked on her fear about the relationship that she was in. Was he the right person? Was he good enough? We worked on that together, and she stayed and she married. The thing is, when we find a relationship, many of us will either sabotage it or we might leave it. Yeah. And Anne and I, we didn't have millions of sessions. We cracked this pretty quickly, and she stayed. GA, who also married this year, she did my retreat in Dorset, and then some one-to-one coaching with me. And again, everything she felt about her then, well, the guy who was interested in her, he wasn't right for her. He had all these issues and problems that she didn't like. He wasn't this and he wasn't that, and he wasn't who she expected to be with. And she's absolutely delighted, and she's now married. Becky, who told me a few days ago that she's pregnant. Now, I know, just as I say that brings up sadness for many of you, and I don't have children, and many of the women I work with don't have children either. Some of them come and work with me early enough, young enough, to be able to work through their patterns and their issues, find a relationship and have children. But that's not the case for many people, or for some people. So, I know that some of you are grieving that. And what I can say to that is, being in a happy, healthy relationship goes some way to healing that loss. So when we're single and we don't have kids and we wanted kids, it feels absolutely dreadful. But being in a happy, healthy relationship and building a different life with someone and doing your plan B with someone, that is very different. And then you can get a dog, which I know isn't the same, but there is lots of other ways that we can have a fulfilling life. She did my course, foundations course, and she did my retreat in Turkey, which I'll tell you about in a little bit. These women, so that's married, two of them, you've all married now. They had a foundation of self-love, which was built with accountability. So with support, with my support, with group support, self-awareness that was built with guidance. So what we've been doing now in this brief workshop, growing our self-awareness. They had an understanding of their fears, which was developed with support, and of their relationship patterns, also developed with support. Then they had support to change their unhealthy patterns for healthy ones. They had support and sisterhood to date in a healthy way. So through working with me or through being on one of my courses. The same to spot the red flags early. So, we don't want to do this alone. And they had support and sisterhood to avoid self-sabotage, and then to stay the course. Because the thing about finding a relationship is it'll freak us out. When we find the relationship that we think we want and we're happy in, most of us will freak out for a little bit and we'll want to leave. And then you've got the after stage when you're actually in the relationship committed, maybe bought a house, maybe married. Then you've got that stage. And as somebody said, one of my clients said the other day, you know, being in a relationship brings up all manner of feelings, you know, anger, frustration, and it brings up a lot of hurt from our past. So you don't want to do it alone, not only the dating stage, but the relationship stage as well. So I have a number of ways that I would absolutely love you to look at to build your healthy foundations with me. And I know there are lots of other coaches out there and lots of other offers. And this is what I offer, and this is how I work. So I work with vulnerability, my own vulnerability. I encourage deep exploration. I encourage growth and healing. And I work one-to-one and also with groups of women, which amplifies and accelerates the process because you've got all these other people doing the same thing. So the first thing I wanted to tell you about is my retreat in Turkey, which happens in 5 weeks' time. And I still have a couple of places. One of the women on this photo is married now, and she's the one who's pregnant. We have others who have totally transformed their lives, and some of them transformed their careers. It's just the chance to be together and explore. So what the Love Retreat in Turkey is what we've just done, but in the sunshine, in beautiful surroundings, holding hands, sisterhood. It's this, it's a safe and supportive space, and it's a lot of fun, magical, out of this world. And ask me about a bonus. So when I send the email round, just get back in touch and I'll tell you about a bonus I have for you. Nina says, absolutely recommend this retreat to anyone who tends to neglect their self-care. So not only is it, you know, relationship coaching, deep healing, yoga, and lots of self-love in the sunshine, it's wonderful fun and self-love, self-care, and perhaps it's exactly what you need. And if it is, wonderful. And somebody asked about my retreats in Dorset. So 2023 will be my next Dorset retreat, hopefully early in the year, around February. So if you're on my list, you'll hear about it. If you would like to join the waiting list, send me an email. A few people have asked about the Dorset retreat, so I think it's going to be popular. But Turkey is happening very soon. So if you want to make changes and you want to make them quickly and you want to jump on, you know, transformation, then that's happening very soon. The other opportunity for those of you who don't want to fly with me to the sunshine and have some winter sun is my Laying the Foundations group program. Starts this coming Monday. This is a bit like what we'll do when I switch the recording off, and hopefully some of you will stay and put your videos on and we'll have a little chat. This is group work, incredibly profound, incredibly healing, lots of support. It means you're not doing it on your own anymore. We have group coaching calls. We have an online program that's got amazing insights, all the things we've talked about. So you'll explore your fears, your patterns, your core beliefs about relationships, your self-esteem, how lovable you feel, your inner child wounds, your connection to yourself and your feelings, and you'll do some healing and letting go. It will transform your dating and relationship experience. I know it will. And I have 3 gifts available for 3 people who get in touch. So that's a complimentary call, which would normally make the course £700, but it's now £550. So I'll put some links in the chat, but you can just, I think you all have my email. So this is, again, what happens when we lay our foundations. Oops. So Fiona, so I mentioned her earlier. You know, she came to me fearing that she was getting older and that nothing had worked. It was never going to happen. And she was the only person that she knew or in her family who hadn't made this happen. She took my foundations course and my Date with Courage course, and she did one-to-one coaching, and she also did my Dorset retreat. So she was all in and it's absolutely changed for her. She began dating with my support and the support of all the course participants, and she had a coach helping her to run the race. She began a relationship, and she worried about whether it was right or wrong, and she was in and she was out, and he wasn't this and he wasn't that, and should she stay or should she go? She stayed, and she was delighted to tell me, and I was delighted to hear that she got engaged a couple of months ago. And this is Becky, who I mentioned, who is married and took my foundations course and also came to Turkey. She was one of the very early adopters of my foundations course. And she says it will soften, challenge, and inspire you. And these are other, Alice, she's a lot younger, and she did both my courses and some one-to-one, and she is in a healthy relationship. Joyce has totally transformed her life in many, many ways, as has Nina, as has Joss. So not only will this course help you connect with yourself, grow your self-esteem, and change your relationship patterns, but it will also put you in touch with the dreams that you have for your life and give you the courage to go for them. And often, which I haven't actually said, so I'm just going to finish this and then I'm going to say it because it's important. Save time, money, energy, and heartache. So this is what I said, and I absolutely believe it. I know that coaching is expensive, courses are expensive, retreats are expensive. I also know the amount of time, money, energy, and heartache we spend doing dating, making mistakes, wasting months, wasting years. Not necessarily wasting, because we're always learning and we're always growing and we're always healing. So nothing is failure, it's all growing. But I believe that I am able to move this forward very quickly. And that's what is in that final quote. You pointed out things to me that I hadn't figured out in all my years of therapy. And I pride myself on that. So I believe that if you come on a retreat or you come on a course or you do some one-to-one, you will have results quickly. So this is me. So lay your foundations for love first and don't go it alone, and gather support. This is how I can support you. So all these details will come to you tomorrow in a call, in an email. And remember, I have 3 of those bonus places on the course with the complimentary call, and I have a bonus for a few of you on the Turkey retreat. I also have some great workshops and resources, and there's my book, How to Fall in Love, if you haven't read it. So I'm going to stop the share, and I just want to say something that might be relevant to some of you. Thank you for staying on. There are payment plans for the group program, absolutely. So please get in touch and ask about the payment plan. Thank you. Yeah, great feedback and results. So the group calls for the course they're on Tuesdays at this time, 7 o'clock on Tuesdays, alternate Tuesdays. And then there'll be some additional lunchtime ones that will be short and can be recorded, which are obviously lots of people can't make, but the Tuesday evening it is at 7. The course begins on a Monday because you start with the material yourself on a Monday. So a lot of this, you'll get videos every day, worksheets to work through, and then we come together on our group call. And the group that you form, either on the retreat or on the course, it will support you. So I have a group of ladies who retreated with me. In fact, Fiona is one of them, who is now engaged. They retreated with me just before COVID. They have been supporting each other throughout on WhatsApp. They are still in a group, and they are meeting again in November. We're doing a retreat again, just their group and me in November. They've brought me in to do a follow-on retreat. So that group, this is what you find after doing these courses or retreats. You have a network of people, emotionally intelligent women on the same path, and you don't have to do it on your own, and you are supported. So the course starts on Monday, the 12th. The first call is on Tuesday at 7 p.m. There is a payment plan. The calls are on alternate Tuesdays. assuming everyone can make Tuesday, there's a possibility of moving it to Wednesday, but Tuesday evening, 7 p.m, alternate, and all the material then you work on yourself, and then you bring it to the group course. And there's a WhatsApp group where you can support each other. There's a Facebook group where you can support each other if you want to. And then you're connected to all the alumni who've taken my courses and retreats. With Turkey, get in touch as soon as you can. The lower value, lower cost rooms will go very quickly. In fact, there's just a couple left. But although the shared spaces are still available, I don't have dates for Dorset yet. One thing that I needed to do, and that some of my clients need to do and have done, is I needed to live my authentic life first before I found love. And that meant that the job that I was doing, so some of you know, prior to being this, I was a journalist, news journalist, working in politics. So I would have been stood in Downing Street today listening to Liz Truss. I had a very, very busy job that absolutely consumed my time and my energy. I didn't really have much time for dating. I didn't have much time for myself. I had money, but I was exhausted and depleted. And I had lost interest and passion for my job. So I felt quite depressed. And I was also hoping and wanting to meet someone in that pool. So I wanted to meet a political journalist or a foreign correspondent or a photographer, because that's who I was. And I wanted to meet someone like me. That's not who I was anymore. I broke down in that job. I burnt out in that job. I totally reevaluated what I was doing. I transformed my career. I started to blog. I started to write from my heart. I started to work for myself and have more space in my life. That is when I found love. Not in my high profile, busy, high earning job, not in my highly stressful job, not amongst the pool of journalists and photographers and politicians and VIPs that I mixed with, not on the helicopter flying through Afghanistan, none of that. That's not where I found my man. I found my man when I quit that life and got in touch with who I really was, that I wanted to spend more time at the beach, wanted to spend more time outdoors, wanted to be master of my own time, and wanted to write creatively rather than news. For some of you, it could be that you're not leading your authentic life, and that might need to change. And I know how much courage that takes. I had to walk away from a desk in the Houses of Parliament, from a big salary, and from lots of security. And it was hard, but it changed everything. So for some of you, it might not be about your patterns. It might not be about your fears. It might be that you need to change your life and your career so that you can live your authentic life, have more time for yourself, get in touch with who you actually are, and start dating in the right pool. I mean, you might be an accountant, but you want to marry you're looking for an accountant, but you actually want to be a poet and marry a farmer. You get my point. So I'm going to leave it there. If anyone, I'm going to switch the recording off now, but those of you watching on recording, please get in touch with any questions. So those watching on recording, I'll say goodbye.